we talked about glass in the 60s, it meant blown at the furnace.
Yeah.
Period. On a blowpipe. Period. That was it.
By oneself.
And by oneself also. Oh, why do you think that? I have a theory. What's your thought on the reason that we worked alone without helpers?
It's Harvey's concept of his hatred for design.
Ah.
He felt that industrial design was such a horrible field because the artist is separated from the product.
Yeah.
And doesn't have any intimate control of the product at all, except with his pictures that he's drawn on paper. And he fought that. I know in all of the crafts councils, conferences, he was always pushing for the artist designer who's working at the bench or whatever, making the object himself rather than designing it. And I think he saw that if you have a crew working for you, you're going to become a designer. And you're not going to be designing it as you make it.
I seem to remember that there were discussions about the type of object that we were capable of making, which was fairly crude object at that time in the 60s, and that any factory produced glass was symmetrical and straight and colorful and all these other things that were extremely attractive to the general public. Our pieces had to stand on the merit of expressing the fluid quality of molten glass. At least that was our rap. That's what we told people. You remember any of that kind of discussion?
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was an exhibition in 1966 at the Toledo Museum of Art called Glass National, Toledo Glass National.
Oh.
One, it turns out, but at first they just named it the National. In 66, and there was a ruling that you could not submit any work for that exhibition. It was a competitive exhibition. There was a 3-man jury, and you could not submit anything that was made with while you used a helper. So you couldn't have anybody opening and closing the door. You couldn't have anybody bringing you the punny. You couldn't have a handle brought to you. If it had a handle, you had to do it yourself.
Right.
That was a hard and fast rule in 1966. And I'm just curious why we made that rule. And I've often thought that we were trying to differentiate the free, loose, organic expression of our work. We were differentiating that from the tighter, more controlled factory work, which was always done with a team.
Right.
And I wondered if somebody somewhere along the line might have said, let's figure out a way to keep those factory pieces out of our exhibition.
I suspect that was the reason.
I really believe it.
Yeah.
I really believe it. And I've asked some other people, but I haven't gotten a consensus. I'm glad to hear that you feel that way, because I can't pinpoint somebody actually saying that, and I certainly don't have a document of it being said.
That seminar that Toledo had, I don't know, don't think it was it was the 65, the next year. 67.
67, the next year, yes.
That one, we had a seminar after.
That's right, we did. That's
and
right.
At that, I think that was discussed.
Yeah.
At the seminar.
Yeah. And if I remember rightly, the 67 Glass National 2 is the last time that restriction was ever used for any glass exhibition of my knowledge that I know of.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw it again.
It just went away.
No.
I also remember that by that time I was in Toledo. I was living there and working, setting up the glass shop. And they rejected a nice, beautifully blown little piece from the exhibition made by Bob Mess on the basis that it was impossible for one person to have blown that piece. The juror said that.
And none of the jurors were glassblowers.
They had no concept of how it... Now, I know exactly how that... I can look at a piece like that. I knew how he made it. I knew that he did it alone. He's not the kind of person that would go against a ruling like that.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't send anything that had help. And plus, he was working alone. That's the way he did things. That's the way almost everybody did things early on. And all it required was putting a small cup, take it off the punny and put it into the bottom of the annealing oven upside down with the punny mark up. Then you blow another bubble, and you go put some hot glass on it, go down and pick up that one on the bottom. That becomes your foot.
Yeah.
Then you punny up the inside of it. I know that's how he made it. And those jurors, I've held it against them ever since, because they kicked out a really nice little piece. It was really a cute little piece, really nice.
Yeah.
I don't mean cute in a derogatory manner at all, derogatory fashion.
Well, I think probably Mark Peiser was the first one to use assistants.
I'm going to suggest somebody else.
Who?
Dale Chihuly. No, not me at all. I was a follower. I was a late bloomer when it came to using an assistant. In fact, I sort of used to brag that I could do things on my own, and I could bring handles, and I could do all the I added lip wraps. I did a lot of stuff just, out of orneriness.
Well, there's one thing I beat you at.
That
adapting handy aids in the studio.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't have a hanger to hang my blowpipe up.
Yeah.
I went to get a punny. I carried the blowpipe in my hand, got a bit on a punny, rolled it on my thigh and the barver.
Right.
Went over and laid the blowpipe down and stuck it up.
Right. Yeah, I may have watched you do that, but I know I did it also. But I may have seen.
I don't know how we did it at Iowa, but I know we didn't have a pipe hanger there.
No. But we did have a lot of people standing around.
That's true. Might have had help. Maybe we were the first ones to use assistants. I don't remember.
Maybe.
Well, you and I blew a piece of glass together there.
In Iowa?
The end of the 64 class, we were emptying the furnace. And it was this copper ruby glass.
Yeah.
And there was only about an inch of glass in the furnace. And so I got enough to get a gather on the blowpipe to start. And maybe added
one more,
2 or 3 more half gathers.
Yeah.
And then you started bringing me bits to add to it.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a vase about this wide and this high. And somehow it was a cylinder, horizontal cylinder. And an opening in the middle.
Yeah.
That somehow I accomplished. I don't know how. We had a lot of glass out on the sides.
Right.
I just kept blowing it out.
Right.
So you'd bring me over a bit on one end, and I put it on the other end. And that lasted quite a few years, but it had quite extreme thick and thin sections. And the thin sections finally started breaking.
If we go way back in the history of glass, before our time.
Yeah.
Like 100 AD.
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of size group they might have had of people.
We do.
We do?
There's drawings on a pot of glass blowers, and there's 3. 3 people
working on
one piece of glass.
Really?
One is bringing a punny.
Yeah.
And the third one is, there was a third person there, I think, carrying a piece.
Yeah.
To the oven.
Yeah. And you don't think they saw Chihuly? See, I say that about Dale because he went to Venice and worked and watched in the Vanini factory where everything pretty much they do is by teamwork. Occasionally there might be a solo piece, but but the vast majority is teamwork. And he had that interest even while he was a student at Madison. Before he went to Italy, he didn't know it, but he wanted to work with a team.
Huh.
And guess who the first guy was that helped him with a bit here and there?
You.
Was me. And in fact, I remember walking into the glass lab. This really doesn't, I guess it's all related. I walked in the glass lab, and it was a kind of a long walk down to where the furnaces were at the back of the building. And Dale was in the center of the room. We had two furnaces, and the annealers were along the wall, and the grinders over on the other wall. And Dale was in the center of the room. He had like gotten rid of the bench, just get everything out of the way, just this big open area. And he was turning around in a circle, and he was holding the blowpipe out at 90 degrees to his body, parallel to the floor, rotating the blowpipe, blowing on a bubble, and swinging it all at the same time. Blowing, swinging, and spinning. And I walked up to him and I said, Dale, you want a hand? And, even though that was foreign to us, to help each other, it just seemed like he needed help. And I was tickled. I was proud as a peacock when Dale did one of his books where he was talking about teamwork. In the subject of the book was teamwork, and he said, and Fritz Dreisbach was the first guy that helped me. Of all my helpers, and they're all famous.
Yeah.
And he was the first one that helped me while we were still both students at Madison. So that's why I'm pretty sure that he has to be in there in the group of the early birds to try to utilize help. And but what that did was it opened up everything. I can go to the hot shop and blow something and get it in the annealer and get it out tomorrow. And I made it all by myself, no help. But why would I do that when I can make a piece so much more interesting to look at, more interesting to actually even fabricate if I have help? And the better the help, the more fun it is for me. So anyhow, that's sort of an aside, but it was a part of the early days, that solo blowing emphasis. Yeah. And I've always thought that it was to differentiate our work from those factory people and try to, I don't know, justify the work is not really the right word, but to make it acceptable. But this is the artist working alone himself.